Welcome to Pandora's box. Welcome again to Pandora's box. I'm your host, as always, Obadiah Pennywhistle. With me, as usual, in the studio, we have Mr. Nathaniel Warren, host of the Rap Radar, Sundays from 8 until 10. Also, Young Bullwinkle. Also, the Jimmy O'Malley, the hallowed baby.
The one, the
himself,
only.
the chosen one. Anakin Skywalker, eat your heart out. To the right of me, we have Mr. Drusif Armstrong, a man of many talents and many names and many a strange story.
I'd like to be Scottish today.
Yeah,
if I can.
Go ahead, lad. Yeah.
Aye.
If it just feels right in your heart.
That feels right.
You know, like the Highlander.
Aye.
You know, Conor McLeod of the Conor
I'm going to be called Heather.
Heather, please. So yeah, Drusy is with us as always.
What's up?
So, what should we call you today then, mate? Should we give you astronomical themes? You can be Pluto.
Pluto and Heather.
Pluto and Heather.
I was going to be Skim Tim today, but that's fine.
Skim Tim? Maybe you can maybe as the episode goes on, you can have this weird confliction with yourself in your personality, and every now and again Skim Tim.
Got a little character arc.
Yeah, we'll be trying to break the surface.
Yeah.
And he's like the one that's a bit more like naughty and mischievous.
Yeah.
And Pluto's like represents the good sort of
the purity,
the stoic, pure part of your soul. You know?
That makes sense to me, man.
Yeah, it makes
to me.
Perfect sense to me. But for anybody listening or anybody watching, thanks for joining us as usual. If you're listening to us on the radio, please go on YouTube, type in Pandora's Box Podcast, and follow us on YouTube. We also have a Spotify channel.
We do.
So please go on Spotify and follow us on there as well. So whichever way you're...
I think we're on all podcast mediums, aren't we? We're on.
We certainly are, Pluto.
Are we? So find us. Wherever you usually listen to stuff or watch stuff, find us on there. Please give us a follow.
As well.
And for anybody that does already just like listen to the show every week, we appreciate every single one of you. And
absolutely adore you.
Love you. Just want to say, just to kick off the show, we are under the umbrella of the bigger company that is Aspen Waite. So Aspen
I've got
Waite,
a really dirty cup here.
It's very dirty because he's a dirty little monkey.
I'm a dirty man. Oh, actually, look at the mic heads. You can see AW right there.
Oh yeah. Hey, I forgot about
that.
that. So go on aspenwaite.com. Is it .com or .co.uk? I never remember.
Aspenwaite.co.uk or aspenwaiteradio.com.
Yeah. On aspenwaite.co.uk, you'll be able to find the plethora of services that Aspen Waite provide, from accounting, research, tax, research and development, business advice, specialising in helping the little man. You know, helping business startups and stuff.
Great business advisors.
Yeah, so basically, if you've got a talent and you can make money from something, but, you don't know the business side of things, you're just not that way inclined. You don't need to be. You're just good at your job. Get in touch with Aspen Waite. They'll sort you out. Also, if you want like a radio on the advert for your... A radio on the advert? An advert on the radio for your business or anything like that, get in contact. Me and Druzy will make you a nice little jingle. Hey. And then we'll put it on the airwaves for you.
Nice.
So I've got like a little cool fact to start off the day.
Ooh.
Did you guys know? Did I know that 3 days ago, Pluto completed its first cycle around the sun for 248 years?
What?
So essentially it was like a day. A day for Pluto is 248 years.
That's absolutely madness.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Cool.
That's its first full revolution around the sun. That's probably the best way to say it. So
how did you know where to start, though?
I guess it's just when it comes back to its...
I think that's the
But did they start measuring it 200
They must have done.
Ago?
They must have done. I mean, they did obviously have pretty advanced like astronomy by then, like astrophysicists,
loving the
and
stars.
Stuff like that. Yeah, but I just think that's such a cool fact, isn't it?
That its cycle is 200. What was it? 246.
248 years.
48 years. That's a
completed
long
its
time.
first revolution around the sun.
That's mental.
That's cool, isn't it? That's a very cool fact. Anyway, Ukraine. crazy stuff going on in Ukraine, isn't it?
Christ!
Oh, dude.
Absolutely. Have you heard about have you heard about all the stuff that like Elon Musk has been getting involved with though?
Hadn't he just shot them some internet from the sky?
Yeah, I thought that was well cool.
Like
So
Russia just stopped the internet.
Yeah,
and
Russia stopped the internet.
And he was like, right, I'll get you guys some internet from one of my space stations.
Yeah, so he's just provided internet across all over the Ukraine.
Nice one, Elon.
What a baller.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, it's like apparently like the Russians like deliberately wanted to get rid of the internet because they knew it'd like be really bad for morale. Because obviously if you can't contact people and all you're seeing is like ruins and rubble around you, you're like way more likely to surrender. But if you're like online and you're seeing like that, you know, that Ukraine is still fighting back and that they're all like these countries over the world are like doing different stuff, and actually hearing that people like Elon Musk are getting involved.
Yeah.
And did you hear as well that I think it was yesterday, there's like some space station like that's like in orbit above sort of roughly somewhere, like if it landed it would land somewhere in like Europe or America. And it was like Russia traditionally, it was like they were gonna like look after it essentially. If it like fell from the sky, they were gonna like get it before it like just crash landed into like London or like New York or something. And they basically said like if you keep playing games and stuff, then we won't salvage it. And then straight away Elon Musk just like put something out and he was like, SpaceX will get it
nice.
before it crashes. So
have you seen Anonymous have declared cyber war?
Yeah, I saw that
on Russia. That's pretty big.
Apparently they like hacked their
TVs.
The TVs.
I saw this. Yeah.
So the only thing that was playing on Russian television was like for some like Ukrainian pop songs.
It was like it was like the Ukrainian national anthem.
Oh, was it? Oh,
yeah.
Oh, right. I knew it was like
that must have pissed
the Ukraine thing.
Right. Oh.
yeah.
Thing is, a lot of the Russian population doesn't actually want the war, do they?
No, of course not.
I think
they've been like protesting against it.
Yeah, there's quite a few thousand people that have been arrested.
I mean, I think that's the thing. I think one of the reasons why, or one of the things that will most likely make the war stop, is actually internal. Do you know what I mean? It'll be like backlash against Putin from actual Russian civilians. The thing is, they're so scared of him though, because he's a full-on dictator, isn't he? He's one of those people like on paper he's not, but he is. Like because there's that rule, isn't there? I can't remember how many years.
Czars.
I can't remember how many years it is that you're like technically supposed to be like allowed to be in charge of Russia before it becomes like tyrannical. But he just got like a little like loophole around it. So like, because he's been like president of Russia now since like the year 2000 or something.
Well, they used to have Tsars and everything, didn't they? And then they moved away from that, and then
that's essentially
the same.
That's actually quite different in a way, because the Tsars, that was when they had like a monarchy. So the Tsars were like the ones that were like the relatives of Queen Elizabeth. So so Queen Elizabeth's like father, cousin was Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. But in Russia, the Russians overthrew their royal family and they killed them. And they literally, and they even killed like the women and children and stuff.
When was that?
That was like around the time of roughly around the time of the First World War, like after the First World War.
Am I right in saying they used to just party all the time? That was like all...
What, the Tsars?
Yeah.
I think obviously it would depend on the Tsar. I'm certainly not an expert. I know like I know the bare facts. But back in those days, like all of the kings and a lot of the kings and queens of Europe were like cousins.
All over the world, isn't it? Like the kind of monarchies and there's like quite related.
Yeah.
Like France, Germany.
Yeah, I mean, obviously back in the day, the reason why that is because back in the day, to almost like, let's face it, right? Imagine you were the king. Imagine if you had a daughter. You're not going to marry your daughter to like a blacksmith, are you? You're going to marry him to like a prince from like another. So you'd marry to them like, to like the Prince of Sweden.
It's like I'm watching the new Vikings at the moment, and it's like the English queen is from Normandy and from like Viking descent from like
that would be that's a great example. So obviously in that time frame that you're talking of, sort of like around like 1000 AD, sort of 1100 AD, like Scandinavia and Britain were so entwined. That like it was so, the British people in general would have had a lot of Scandinavian DNA, and then subsequently Scandinavian people would have had a lot of British DNA.
And then Canute, he was King Canute. first like Scandinavian English king, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he's one of. See, it's interesting because a lot of people talk about how like Alfred the Great's name was Alfred the Great because he's the only born English monarch with the moniker the Great. which is quite a cool fact. But what people don't realise is that he was the only English-born monarch, but he wasn't the only ever English king. So King Canute was King Canute the Great. So there's been two the Greats. Yeah. King Alfred the Great and King Canute the Great.
Did the English people like King Canute?
Yeah.
They did?
King Canute was a good king.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he was a good king. Well, I think the thing is, obviously, it's like, when I say they did, I mean, it depends who you're asking. Yeah. I'm saying...
I'm just thinking, like, did the English people accept a foreign king, you know?
Yeah, they did. And, like, the reason I said yes is because, like, so from my reading of King Canute the Great, like, when I read about him, I'm not like, oh, man... I wouldn't have wanted him as my king. I was thinking like, oh, he's a cool guy.
He introduced some things,
and I'm just trying to remember because this is off the top of my head. I think he was king of England, Denmark, and Norway at the same time.
Wow!
What? So like, what a don.
That's cool.
I'm pretty sure that's a fact. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I'm pretty sure that's a fact. But that's cool, isn't it? How do we even get onto that? SARS. Oh yeah, no. Yeah. So
and Ukraine.
Obviously, a lot of
relations.
A lot of royal families in Europe, they would have been related because, as I said, you're gonna want to marry. If you're like a king, you're gonna want to marry your son or your daughter
bloodlines
to another.
as well, isn't it? Like keeping the bloodlines pure.
Yeah, and elite. Yeah, because like obviously you can then take that a step further. So it's like obviously like the Europeans didn't want to inbreed. Because at the end of the day, I mean, especially like to start with, let's face it, if you're gonna, especially considering how much of like a bigger place the world was in those days, if you're gonna like marry your daughter in like England to some like prince in like, I don't know, like Denmark or Sweden or like France, then you're not gonna have any of the same DNA. Do you know what I mean? So it's like that's very pure. But
you're not gonna come out with any strong arms.
Yeah. But then it's when you get into things like Egyptians that's weird. Because then it was like, it was like really common for like cousins and stuff to marry, and in some cases I think even brother and sisters.
Oh, I always find like looking at things like with the Romans where it was like really not like kind of it was really normal for them to have like boy slaves that they had like sexual relations with and things like that. Like it was a normal part of their culture, but it was almost a similar thing with like relations and stuff as well, with like brothers and sisters, and like you'd have all that stuff going on. I just think it's like so crazy.
It's mental now, but that's just the way it was.
Yeah,
it's
just weird.
I'm not sure. I don't think with Romans it was so much like boys and stuff. I think that was more Greek. But it was. I don't think it was like common in Roman society to like get with your sister.
No, I think with the boys thing though, because I've been reading that Marcus Aurelius book, and he was like, he talks about what he's like. I learnt from my father. He's like, and my father overcame his obsession with boys, and it's just in this book, and I'm like. Or his love.
So when he says
boys,
obsession with boys,
like no, he literally meant like sexual relations with.
That's the thing. That's the thing is obviously back in those days it wasn't as taboo to be homosexual.
Not at all.
Like it's not anymore. Obviously again, but obviously we went through a period. Say like obviously like 100 years ago you could have been arrested for being gay in like Britain. But like in the Roman times, it wasn't like.
And what's that other one? You know where you would get like trained by
in Spartan society.
Yeah, Spartan society.
So if you were like a hoplite, which is what like a Spartan soldier was called, you would have like a wife.
Yeah.
And obviously that would be who you'd have kids with, and they would look after your home while you're out essentially at war all the time. Because if you're at Spartan, that's what you do. You're like never home. You're always at war. And then you would have like almost like an apprentice. Very Star Wars, but so you would almost have like a young boy that you would train one-on-one to fight. So he would like you're almost like teaching him the ropes, literally like Star Wars. So that by the time he's mature, he's like just as badass as you are now.
But when he was younger,
but then at night time they'd almost
him warm of a night.
Yeah, but then at night time they'd almost like
have relations,
get jiggy,
get jiggy with it.
I mean, in all, and obviously I mean this in jest because I would never mean any disrespect to the Greek people. I actually like love Greece, and I've always like loved Greek people. But that's like a very Greek thing, though, isn't it? My friend Max Karakides has always like said. Like if it's got a hole.
That is a goal.
And that's just like a very, that's almost like a very old-fashioned Greek thing, I always think like, not like today, but like in ancient Greece, they were like that,
Very open.
Yeah. It was just almost like they'd be naked all the time, having orgies. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, just whatever. Drink some wine, get jiggy.
Get jiggy with it, baby.
Discuss some philosophy, Check out the Utahraptors mechanism. That computer that we were talking about a while ago on Pandora's box?
The oldest computer.
That oldest computer that's like that can like map the stars and stuff like that. I was going to say actually, when we were mentioning Pluto, I said obviously like the 248 years that it's been, and I said that was like a day. That's no, it's not like, it wouldn't be like the equivalent of a day. That'd be like the equivalent of our year, obviously. The full rotation.
Okay.
Of course,
So I just want to say that before everyone's like, oh,
you idiot.
you idiot. Yeah. So obviously it takes 365 and a quarter days for our Earth to completely rotate around the sun, but it takes Pluto 248 years.
Have you seen about the Ghost of Kyiv?
Do you know, I've heard of it, but I haven't actually
So I'll let you know. The Ghost of Kyiv is a Ukrainian pilot. There's a lot of deliberation online at the moment over whether it's real or not. I think some clips of it have been like proven fake, like being like made from games and stuff. But basically, the story goes that this guy he's now 11-0 against Russian pilots or jets. So he's just this one like jet fighter. He's just going out and like just taking down multiple pilots.
What, people don't know who he is?
He's just nicknamed the Ghost of Kyiv.
That's badass if that's
How
true,
cool is that? He's like 11-0, and people just see him like flying overhead and just taking down planes, and they can't like fight back.
Does 11-0 means he's got 11 and
11 planes
they haven't
shot down?
Got him yet.
Yeah, that's almost how you like rank it as like an air fighter pilot.
So who was that sniper that was like the amazing sniper? Was
the
he
White
Russian,
Death?
actually?
The White Death.
Yeah.
Where was he from?
Well remembered, mate. Finland.
Finland.
Yeah. So that was from the. That was from the.
Was that fighting the Russians as well? Yeah.
So that was actually like quite a big embarrassment for Russia, because Finland is like relatively a small country. Especially compared to Russia. But yeah, the Finns won that war.
Yeah,
the Finns won that war. That's crazy,
they went
isn't
to
it?
Town.
Because fair
to
play to the Finns.
Snow warfare, weren't they?
They were like the experts of it. Yeah, so like every single like Finn, just like it was almost like every single one of them had to be like as good as like 50 to 100 Roman troops, but they like actually almost like were. I think the thing with like the Russians, which is almost like such a daunting task for anyone, it's like their sheer numbers.
Size.
Obviously, they're like by far the biggest country on the planet. Like by far, if you actually look at the map of the world, that's like
bigger than China.
A lot bigger.
Oh, wow!
Like over twice the size.
Yeah, more I'd say.
I think China's like the third or fourth. I want to say maybe fourth biggest country in the world. I want to say off the top of my head, this is obviously like doing research. I want to say it goes Russia, Canada, and then I think it's like almost like a toss-up between Australia and China.
What about America?
America's big too, but I reckon
America's bigger than China.
Google it, my friend. Google it, young Bullwinkle. I would not be surprised if China and Australia are bigger than the US. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised. I'm pretty sure it's. I tell you what's really big as well. Brazil. Brazil's massive as well. But I'm pretty damn sure it's Russia 1, Canada 2. I'm pretty damn sure of that.
Russia 1, Canada 2, number 3, China.
Right.
And then USA number 4. But this is close.
And then what's
extremely close? Actually.
And then what's after that? Is it Australia or Brazil?
I'll get it up. It says it has Canada ranked number 2, but says its percentage of world landmass is 6.1. However, China's is 6.3 and they're third.
I don't really.
United States number 4, Brazil number 5, Australia number 6, India number 7. But yeah,
I was gonna say India is also massive.
India's quite
but
big,
I do because they're pretty much like next to each other. It's easy, it's like they're very similar, but it's easy to sort of see that China's big. Where they're right next to each other, whereas it's a bit hard to say if you're like trying to compare like Brazil to like Australia, because they're like
quite far apart.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but Russia's like almost double the size of.
Yeah, I was gonna say they are like that's the reason why it's almost like they're impossible to invade. So even though people win wars against Russia, or they have done historically, it's like
never overtaken Russia as a country.
No, Hitler tried so hard, and so did Napoleon, and those were like two of the most like dominant forces of the last sort of 500 years. And Napoleon, to be fair to Napoleon, like he wasn't like Hitler. Like in a lot of ways, Hitler was an idiot. Do you know what I mean? Like he wasn't a good military general. He was just a great at propaganda. He was great at getting people behind him, and sort of like he was almost like a cult leader. And how it's like, and in terms of like how you hear about like somebody like Charles Manson and how he like convinced those people to like go and kill that woman and like her unborn baby
among the nation.
And it's like you think how does one guy manage to convince people that seemed like they were like fairly normal before they joined this cult to just go and murder somebody, like murder a woman that's pregnant? Like murder that woman, you know what I mean? But it's like Hitler was almost like that. Hitler was almost like Charles Manson. Like he convinced the entire of Germany almost like to become Nazis.
I do think people are really weird like that. Like people do follow orders. Like even if it's morally, if it's
A lot of people,
if it's against morally what you stand for and things. Like I remember reading about. I think I might have said about it on the podcast before, but I remember reading about this this lab study that was done where it was like giving people electric shocks, and if so you'd never do. If you were hooked up to some electric equipment, I wouldn't give you an electric shock right now. Like, you know what I mean? You wouldn't like purposely hurt someone.
I'd like to think.
As soon as these people, a lot of these people though, as soon as someone came in with a lab coat and like a clipboard and said, okay, this is the test we're doing, like you've got to administer this shock to this person, like people would just do it because they were told by what they see as like someone that's in a higher position of authority than them actually saying this is what we're doing for like the test or whatever, and then they would just shock people, and it was just like crazy how many people actually did it. It was like a stupid percentage, like nearly everyone.
Yeah, there's a Darren Brown where he like does that test, isn't there?
Yeah, I've seen something like that.
Do you remember when it's like they're like kittens in like a tank, in like a glass tank,
okay,
and then it's like I can't remember the premise of it exactly because it's been like years. I've only watched it once and it was like years ago, but I remember the basic premise of it was like they had to like press this button and like the button would like kill the kittens.
What?
And these were normal people, and you could tell some of them were really like struggling with it. But I think like the majority, like 90% of the people, I think he did it with like 4 or 5 different people, and like it was only like one person. Out of
just
all
because he said you've got to do it?
I think it was like, as you said, somebody came in a lab coat. So like he does it all behind the scenes. People don't know it's Darren Brown. He like orchestrates these whole things. And like uses it's a demonstration of psychological manipulation. That's basically what his shows are about, aren't they? And like the power of the mind and how like you can almost like,
be easily influenced subconsciously.
Yeah, like psychology is almost like everything. Everything. That's almost like what his shows are about, isn't it? And it was like I think every single one apart from one person, it was like they were just about to like they went to press the button, and obviously the button wasn't actually going to kill the kittens, but then they actually just showed them and they pressed it, and then when that happens, almost then Darren walks in and he's like, hello, nice to meet you, and then he's like explains them, and they're all like, oh my god, I can't believe, and he's like, this was just a demonstration today about how through the
people will kill
kittens. through the power of psychological manipulation, this guy, you thought he was a doctor and he was wearing like a coat.
Really, he's just an actor.
yeah
I like to think that I wouldn't.
Yeah, you like to think so, but I find it so crazy how like the subconscious part of it. Like I remember watching a Darren Brown one as well, where he was like saying something from over a tannoy in a shopping centre, and he was like, if I just put this in, you watch how many people will actually get like down on the floor or something like that, and then he just says it, and like people just like sit down, or like they're just walking around the shopping centre, and it's just like crazy.
I remember go on.
Is Darren Brown the one who like made a fake zombie apocalypse?
Yeah. That's
and he put
I
that
remember
guy in
watching that. I must have been young when I was watching that, and I remember
because that came out like over 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I must have come in the room and just my mum had been watching it, or whatever, and just been like, "What is going on?"
I remember I loved that.
Yeah,
I remember watching that. I think that came out on like
I might have
channel
to rewatch that
4 or something. That was you can find it online. He's done some amazing stuff. He did another one where it's almost like somebody's come to like help out at like some like business event in the evening, some like some like nice sort of business event, and then I can't remember exactly how it happens, but somebody like dies, and then because they didn't want to ruin the event, like the person that's obviously like an actor is like trying to convinces the person to get rid of the body, and it's like obviously you shouldn't do that. You should like ring the services, ring the ambulance, ring the police, and be like, but instead they like wrap them in a plastic bag and and everything, and like the person's like going along with it, and yet again I think it's like between 3 or 5 people I think they does it with, and there's only one person. I think it was only one person that flat out was like, no, I'm not going to do this. Like, what the hell? No, we need to like ring the services.
Yeah.
Everyone else was like, you could see they all felt well uncomfortable, but they did it.
Yeah. I imagine it's because he's putting them in that situation where not a lot of people get put in that situation. Like, so you don't know what to do. So
in that situation, rather than think for yourself, you will follow what is instructed of you. And I think that's it, isn't it? Like you haven't got enough, power in your own mind to make the decision for yourself, or you're so uncomfortable in a new situation. Then you'll just follow what someone who seems to know what they're talking about. If they come with that energy of like, this is what we got to do, a lot of people are just like, all right.
I think that's almost like, it's weird. I think that's almost like overthinking things, don't you think?
What do you mean?
Like, I think that in that, like, to me, in that instant, in like an instance like that, you should just go with your
instinct.
Your gut instinct is the thing that you should go with. So it's like, if one of you collapsed right now, like what would you do? It's like you would get up, quickly check, like slap you guys a couple times, if that wasn't going to wake you up and it was like one of those things like, well, I don't know what the hell happened there, like just suddenly went real dizzy. If you guys were like full on blacked out, then it would just be like, right, someone ring an ambulance. And meanwhile, while you're ringing the ambulance, I'm going to be like trying to like get this person back awake again, or at least make sure they're breathing. Like simple as that. Do you know what I mean? No, you don't need to like think anything more than that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But I think a lot of people aren't in touch with their own instincts though. So rather than actually acting, people just panic or just not know what to do and almost be like that rabbit in headlights thing, you know?
Do you remember I told you when I thought it was like mental that literally there was only like one literally like middle-aged woman like did something apart from me, but around Christmas time, and I was in Marks and Spencer's, and there was like that. There was this guy who was clearly gone down a bad path in life. You know, he didn't look great. Let's just put it like this. But he'd obviously by this point he's become like a career criminal essentially. But he was like trying to steal like loads of bottles of vodka from the store, and there was like this one girl who looked like she was about like 18-year-old girl, like bless her, like trying to stop him and like dragging him, and he was just basically like dragging her like along the floor. And she was like proper like shouting and almost like calling for aid. And there was the supermarket was like pretty packed. I'd say there was probably like about 50 people in the store. Like it's not like a massive M&S store, but it's that's a lot of people in my opinion. And apart from me, only one like middle-aged lady did something. So it was like this 18-year-old girl, this one middle-aged woman, and just me. And then there was like the amount of people that were around. It was almost just like no, my
I think
problem.
people freeze up, don't they? Particularly like you say, if it doesn't actually affect their life.
I mean, the thing it's funny.
It's so easy to just turn a blind eye.
But that's just not
the
good,
right
man.
thing.
That's not good, you know. And it's like I remember Emily telling me like recently, a friend of hers was in a supermarket, and apparently she saw like two guys like shoplifting, like in the store, and like her initial like she was like started thinking about it. And she was like, shall I go and report this to somebody? Shall I shout out and be like, you know, like thief or whatever? And then apparently like she saw him and they were like two men and they both looked like fairly like dangerous. Do you know what I mean? Like look like the sort of guys that are like probably quite dodgy and stuff. And then she was just like, wait a minute, I'm like a woman on my own here, and I've got like kids at home. And she was like, suddenly she started like questioning her own safety, and she didn't do anything. But her initial instinct was she wanted to do something, and then the more and more she thought about it, she like talked herself out of it. And then her partner just happens to be a detective in the police force. Apparently, she spoke to him afterwards about it, and he was like, "I'm glad you didn't do anything," because he was like, "The thing is, some people are so unhinged. It was like they might have like." Had a vendetta against you afterwards, and he was like, let's face it, there are people all over the country, like, you know, not saying this happens like everywhere all the time, but every day in the country something like that will happen, and then like on the way back to the car that person will then get stabbed.
Mate,
you know what I mean?
The person we know, him and his girlfriend got stabbed over a car parking space argument in Taunton.
Man,
you know, like
mental.
what the hell?
That made me so sad, man. That made me so.
The
main thing that made me sad about it, don't get me wrong, it's sad anyway, but just the fact that they had children, that's the thing that made me most sad.
But they had this argument about a car parking space, and then the guys actually turned up at their house that night and just went in and stabbed them. It's just
two men entered the house and then stabbed a man and a woman to death while they had two small children upstairs asleep in bed. Mate, that made me
dispute about a car parking space.
That made me so sad when I heard about it. Like, I almost got like tears in my eyes, man. I was like you know when when you're almost like overwhelmed with sorrow. That's how I felt. Like,
especially when it is like quite close to home like that. It's like you think, oh,
man, the village wasn't far. It was like,
and we used to go to gigs with that person. Like I saw a picture of him, I was like, oh yeah, I recognise him from gigs. You know,
I remember the band he was in, and I remember that girl. Like I didn't know them that well. Like I didn't know them like personally, but I've been to a lot of gigs with them both, and I remember she was always like a very smiley, nice, bubbly person. Like the sort of person if you made eye contact with, she would just smile at you rather than like look away. You know, like some people like look away. She'd just be like randomly just give you a smile, which is nice, isn't it? Man, that made me so sad though. I mean, yeah, that almost like that was a little bit too close to home for me. I think, or like where I have a small child as well. Like I know how much like small children, they rely and they love their parents so much. Like you are your small children's like world.
Yeah.
You are their entire universe, and they like rely on you so much, and they love you so much. To think to imagine that those poor kids that they might have come down the stairs and then seen what they saw after hearing the commotion is, to say heartbreaking doesn't even do it justice.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It's like insane. And as I said, this was a village like what, probably 12 miles from all of our house, sort of something about like that. Really, really not far. And then like what is traditionally known as like quite a pleasant village.
But yeah, it's just like what you're saying about people who are unhinged. You never know who you're going to speak to, or like what's going to happen. You know, so it's like
I remember I was having a conversation with this as well with like some friends of mine over Christmas while they were staying over. We were talking about different sort of like random altercations that have like happened while you've been driving. And I've had like a couple, but luckily I've never been on like the receiving end of anything bad myself. You know, but like, I was hearing like one of my friends told me about like a guy that they knew well who once, you know, thought they were doing the right thing. So they were driving down a country lane late at night, saw like a car at the side of the road and like a guy with his like thumb out. So you're thinking like it's the middle of the night. It was like really bad weather. You're like, you know, help a brother out. Like pulled over. And the guy was like, "Oh, my car's broken down. Could you like give me a lift here, or whatever?" And everything. And they were like, "Yeah, sure." Like you just like jumped in the guy's car, and then like was like all right for like the first like 5-10 minutes, and then just suddenly just like got a knife out and was just like, give me all your money, give me your phone, like give me everything. And he just basically just mugged him. He didn't really need aid. It was like obviously a tactic that this guy did, like just purely just to mug people. So like just took all his cash, took his phone, like everything like that, any valuable possession that he had in his car, like just took that, and then was just like,
that's crazy, man.
And obviously where he was left without a phone or anything, he couldn't do anything, like couldn't ring anybody to help.
Did he take his car as well?
Don't know. I don't think he took his car.
Ah, that's cool.
I don't think he took his car.
At least he can drive.
He mustn't have been like a local guy, I guess. He must have just like gotten back in his car and then just almost just like disappeared into the night.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I can't remember the end of the story, but I assume probably at knife point he made and then driving back to his car, and then probably when he got in his car, he just freaking ran. The car itself was probably stolen. Thing is, obviously, it's hard for like. It's hard for like normal members of society to imagine, but there are some people that, as I said earlier, are like career criminals. That's fully how they make their living. So it's like, you know, the car they're driving is stolen. The things in the car are stolen from different people. You know, they're constantly thinking.
Opportunists.
Yeah, it's like you hear sometimes it's like, you know, there are some people that live in like, you know, Bristol, Manchester, Birmingham, and they'll literally like cruise down the motorway and like drive 10 miles off the motorway, and they're by this point they're like 100 miles from where they actually live. Find some little village somewhere, like break into the house, like steal some stuff, and then they're away again. The actual vehicle they probably got in itself is probably stolen, so they'll probably leave that somewhere on the way back to where they're going. It's very hard to catch somebody that's like that.
Yeah, and it does happen, especially if you've got like tools in your van. Like Danny at Cannington, he's had his tools robbed 3 times from his van.
Yeah, man.
What the heck? You know?
And they're expensive as well, aren't they?
Oh yeah, sort of thousands of pounds. And it's
like
your livelihood.
Tools. Yeah,
it's your livelihood. You know, so you can't work like insurance and everything. You know, you've always got to pay excess on insurance. So if it's like, you know, it's like expensive to get it all sorted, order everything again, and it's just like. It's just crazy. I remember this one as well. Like the car, the van was it had no sign of a break-in or anything like that, and it just happened to be that on that style of van, it was like a Citroen Relay van. That I hope there's no criminals listening to this that are going to take this as like a thing. But like, if you like do this weird thing with like a plumbing thing, like on the window, you literally just went. Like that, and it would like the lock would come. It was like this design fault with the van.
Design flaw, yeah.
So it was unlocked, and Dan was like, you know, I always lock he knew he'd locked it, and then he looked up and he's like, oh, that's obviously what they did then, because they just unlocked it in that way, and it's just like these people know.
Oh man, yeah, they like
see one of those vans like, oh yeah, right, cool, we'll do that.
Man, it's so bad, isn't it? So bad. Have either of you two? I know that you got like followed once when you overtook somebody and they went a bit mental.
Oh man, yeah, that actually sketched me out. That did, yeah. I was a bit naughty though, like in when I was a bit
probably
younger.
Being a bit of a boy racer.
I was in my mum's V6 Mondeo.
Yeah,
and
nice cars, man.
Yeah, it was. It was real nice, and there was this car that was quite slow in front of me, but it overtook another car that was super slow in front of us, or a tractor or something.
Yeah.
And then rather than like just following them and overtaking the tractor, I overtook the tractor, and then I overtook them when they pulled back in, and they got like super annoyed at the fact that I'd done that, and just started like following me basically
the tailgated you.
Yeah, tailgated like all through back from the Minehead Road, then like all through Wemden and stuff like that. And I remember I had to ring my dad, and I was like, right, Dad, wait at your house, just come outside with like a bat or a golf club or something like that. I'm getting followed. Like these guys are angry, and then and I remember we got all the way back to the house, and then I just turned into my dad's, and they just carried on driving. They obviously saw, like, it was my dad and my granddad were both waiting there. And it was just like, but I was pretty sketched out because I was thinking, you don't know what they do. And our friends, I remember, Dan Rule and stuff, that someone in a van behind them jumped out of the van when they were at traffic lights. Came out of the van, cracked him over the head with a hammer, and split his head open, like everything. It's just like, what the hell? They didn't even know what that was. Apparently, these guys just target people and do that.
Also, like, a friend of ours. I won't say his name just for, keep him anonymous. Confidentiality. But a friend of ours also just randomly had their like house raided once, and just like about like 5 guys in balaclavas came in, all with like meat cleavers and hammers and stuff like that. Just came in, and I just put a meat cleaver against his head and just like completely raided his house, like took all of his money, any of his like decent possessions and stuff. And then just freaking got back in their car, and we were just proper like, if you try and fight us or you make a move back, we're just gonna like destroy you basically with these meat cleavers and these hammers. Like, apparently like woke him up as well because it was like really early. It was like nighttime, but already early in the morning, if you know what I mean. It was like 5:30 or something, like a really awkward time, or like 5 o'clock or something like that. So we like woke up and thought like, what the hell? Yeah. And by the time he sort of like gotten into his landing, the door was already like busted in, and then they were like coming in. But that's like. Yeah, mate, the idea that things like that just like happen sometimes is just crazy, isn't it? Like,
this world is a crazy place.
Yeah, man. I think, you've always got to try and always be prepared,
Scout's honour.
Prepare for the worst, hope for the best, And on that, we're going to listen to a track now. This pretty much sums up the three of us. This is I Don't Know Anything by Mad Season. Stick around, guys. That was Carry On, My Wayward Son by Kansas. That was sort of made famous by the show Supernatural, wasn't it? That's a good show, actually.
Oh man, I used to love Supernatural. Yeah, I think you like lent me all of like the box set or something.
Yeah, probably. I think I've only watched like the first like 5 or 6 seasons because I think they only finished like last year.
Really?
There was like 13 seasons by then or something.
Is it just the one where they go into places and like do ghost stuff?
It's like 2 brothers,
right?
Sam and Dean Winchester, and they're like hunters, but they're like
monster hunters.
They hunt like monsters and demons and ghosts and stuff like that. And it's almost like that's like
Dean goes to hell.
Yeah, and like it's a really good show. It's a good show. Spoiler alert, but a late one for Drew then.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But no, it's a good show anyway. We were talking before those last couple of tracks about how it's good to be like prepared because you never know who you're going to run into.
Prepared.
We say we're talking about some crazy car stories. Have either of you two got any more sort of like?
I've got another crazy car story. Ooh. It's one from my dad.
Well, for your dad.
About my dad, right. Yeah. And my dad worked as an expatriate in Nigeria for quite a few years. Yeah. And he was telling me about something that happened to him. So you'd always have I've told you this before, man. Haven't I?
It's a good story.
Yeah. So he'd always have armed drivers with them, driving them around because it's very dangerous in Nigeria. Corruption is like crazy, and like you need to pay off like people just getting through the street to get to certain places and things like that. Like Lagos is where he worked, and that's like really, really bad spot for it. His driver was ill. They were in like a compound where it was like a gated compound for like the expats to live, but he had to go to this meeting in Port Harcourt, which is like one of the main ports where the business like area was and everything.
Yeah, sure.
So it was a really important meeting before the days of Zoom, etc. And he was like, right, okay, well I'll just drive myself this like one time. So we got into the vehicle and everything. Drove along all the way to on the way to Port Harcourt, and there was just like a police officer on the side of the road, and he waved my dad down. And he was like, all right, so stop. Obviously, a police officer, I'm going to stop. Yeah. And he said it was really weird. The police officer like got in the back of his car rather than in the front, like the seat next to him at the front. He got in the back, and my dad was thinking that's a bit weird. But he carried on driving. He just said, "Oh yeah, just drop me off at the next village. I just need to get back to the next village." My dad was like, "All right, yeah, that's a bit weird," but like dropped him off. Carried on his way to Port Harcourt, and he said he just looked in the boot and not in the boot, sorry, just in the rear view mirror, and saw this like little envelope just on the back seat. I was like, that's a bit weird. It's like, what's that? So he like, stopped the car and got out and like looked in the envelope, and the envelope was just full of bullets. And he's like, what the hell is this about? Like, you know, obviously that police officer just like planted those bullets there, and so he just grabbed them and he just chucked them into the bush. He just like chucked them off the side of the road. He's like, I don't want anything to do with that. Whatever that is, I don't want anything to do with that. And then a mile down the road, he got back in the car, started driving. A mile down the road, there was a roadblock of loads of police. And they knew exactly who was coming. They knew exactly. So obviously, this is like a corruption setup thing, where the police officer set him up, put the bullets in there. They'd find the bullets in there, and then they would arrest my dad. He'd go, you know, but he'd seen them. He chucked them out. He said he was talking to them, and they were like proper going through the car with like a fine-tooth comb, like knew what they were looking for. Didn't find anything.
How good is it that your old man checked?
Yeah. Because
they could have false imprisoned.
He was telling me that like what they do over there as well is they'll swap people out in prisons and stuff. So they'll arrest someone, and then you'll go to like the jail and stuff, and then they'll like swap you out for someone else. Like swap your all your and stuff like that. All great.
Oh my God.
Like, anything could have happened there. But luckily, he got a feeling, trusted intuition. What's that? I don't want anything to do that. Chuck it out. And then they couldn't do anything. He was like arguing with them for quite a bit, and they just like, okay, on your way, and just kind of let him go.
They were just like, oh, this hasn't worked.
No.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I tell you what though, when I hear stories of that, I almost just think, thank God that we grew up in a country like we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a part of normal society over there. Yeah. You know.
And there are countries that are even worse. Like, I mean, if you went to somewhere like another African country like Somalia, that would make Nigeria look like not even that bad. Over there, it's like, I do not recommend going on holiday in Somalia, but it's like, it would be like normal to just have a gun put to your head in the street and just somebody just be like mug you, or like I think I can't remember, but I think it's like one of the places, it's like one of the places where it's like easiest to get murdered in the world.
Yeah,
like Somalia.
Did I tell you about the one when he came back from the airport as well? He picked his friend up from the airport.
Is that when like a gun came in the window?
Yeah. So he literally picked his mate up from the airport who was like, he was from Scotland, and he'd not been out to Nigeria before, and he had like an expensive watch on his mate, and my dad was in the back of the car, and they had armed people in the car as well, like the guard people in the front, but literally, his mate was sitting in the back with his arm on the window and the window down, and my dad was like, don't, like, roll your window up. Like, I think the aircon wasn't working in the car or something. It was really hot, obviously, in Nigeria. But he had his arm on it, and my dad was like, don't, you shut your window. Like, this is, you don't want to be doing that. And he's like, oh no, I'm just, that's too hard. Let's just get there. Let's just get back.
He's like, I'm the Highlander. I'm not scared. Yeah.
Next thing, literally, gun in the window. Give me your watch right now. Like, just like holding it up to him, grabbed his arm, and just.
And obviously by that point it's too dodgy. Like, even though you've got armed guards, like the time it would take him to like turn around and almost like threaten him back, that guy's brain's gonna be.
It was all like so quick apparently. Like just like rip it off his arm. Like they knew exactly what they were doing with undoing it. Just rip it off his arm, gun, and then off. You know, and it's just like whoa.
As I said, man, I think that things like that put things into perspective. Like, don't get me wrong, like we don't live in a perfect society here in Britain, and things can be better. But at the same time, I think I'd rather have the glass half full mentality and be almost like thankful that overall in society, we live in a society with like, equal rights. Don't get me wrong. There's always going to be a couple of like sexist people, homophobic people, racist people in our society. But that's not the norm. You like our society punishes people for that sort of thing, and like if there is corruption that's found inside like the police force or within like the court or whatever like that, then when that's found out about, that'll be punished. Do you know what I mean? Like, on the whole, we live in like a pretty good society, So I think it's all relative. I think when I hear stories like that, though, I'm like, on the whole, we growing up in Britain, I remember like me and my mate, Josh Bullwinkle's older brother, we'd like go to the park after school in primary school. Unattended. It was also like fine. We'd like go down to the park as like 7-year-old kids, like just the two of us. It wasn't like a big problem. It wasn't like you might get kidnapped or like somebody might put a gun to your head in like Wemden. Do you know what I mean? It's like very like pleasant, nice, chilled out upbringing. Really, the worst you might get in some like fights with some kids your age or something, but like so what? That's like that's like character building.
It's like a lot of people like who I know from South Africa over here. They've moved over because it was so dangerous over there.
Me too.
It's like crazy. I remember, a woman I worked with at Hinkley Point. Like she was just telling me stories about living on this farm and and just,
exactly the same as a guy in my village. Called Joe, really nice guy, South African guy, like literally like as nice a guy as you could meet. But he said that he moved over to Britain about like 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, and he said nowadays it almost like depresses him when he goes back to South Africa, because he says almost like every single time he goes back, it's like worse than it was before.
It's been like deteriorating.
Oh, it's just getting like worse and worse. Crime's just through the roof. Like nowadays, it's almost like unless you live in like a gated community, like a bit like you were saying about your old man, then you're just not safe. And he said it's like awful. He said it wasn't like that when he was a kid. Because Joe's probably like, I would say maybe like early 40s. So he said it wasn't like it when he was a kid, like growing up in like the 80s and stuff. It wasn't really like that, but it's just gotten worse and worse as the decades have gone by, and now it's like a dodgy place,
Yeah, it does seem crazy, like the freedom of it as well. Like I remember she was telling me stories about the things that they would get up to on the farm and that, and everyone would have like motorbikes. And they do stupid stuff, like she was like, oh, have you ever done the what are they called? What stoplights when you get what are they called? Traffic lights. Have you ever played the traffic light game? And that's not Australian. That's Australian. I can normally do a real good South African accent. You ever done the traffic light game? No, I'm not going to try that. And apparently they would stop at traffic lights and just get out and see how many times they could run around the car before it went green. Just stuff like that, just like random weird little games.
There's a guy called Jono that works in the research and development department at Aspen Waite, and he's a really sound guy. He's a Zimbabwean, and they're very, very similar to South Africans. They sound exactly the same as South Africans. Very similar, John O'Harris, really nice guy. But I remember he was like telling us this story about when he was like a kid. Imagine, bearing in mind how dangerous this is. This isn't like Africa. Bear in mind, you've got things like like Nile crocodiles and stuff in Africa. But he was like saying, me and my mates made a raft. Just got like these big empty barrels and then just like some planks, just tied them up with rope, and then just decided to just go down this freaking this like river on the rafts. And I was like, and he was like, bearing in mind, there could have been crocs and stuff like that. And I'm just like, mate, that is mental.
Yeah.
Like,
so cool.
But yeah, as you said, like it all seems like they've got pretty cool stories over there. Like when they were growing up in their era, like they'd all have like quad bikes and motocross bikes, and they just do like crazy stuff, like be doing mental stuff all the time. And it is crazy. And I remember like Johnny was telling me like back in the day, he said it's like for what would be like a working class wage over here, you could be like live a really good life in like Zimbabwe. I remember he said that like they had like servants, and the servants had their own little like house and stuff. And he said that when he was like younger, he wouldn't even like ever do his dishes or have to do his washing up or anything, because like the servants did everything. It's like just crazy, isn't it? It's crazy to think that was like that within like somebody that we know who's probably like 60 years old's lifetime. Proper cray, man.
Crazy, man.
Proper cray.
Different world.
Pretty wild.
I thought it'd be quite cool to talk about Entelodonts today. Ooh. So for anybody out there that doesn't know what Entelodonts are, they are a very interesting creature that lived during the Miocene era. So they died out about 9 million years ago. By that point in sort of Earth's evolution, the world was starting to look pretty similar to how it is today. So a lot of the sort of there would have been some animals
atmospherically.
Well, in pretty much every way.
Okay.
And when I say every way, what I mean basically is like if you walked around in the Miocene, a lot of the animals that you would have seen would have been very similar to the animals today.
And the trees would be the same size and stuff.
There are some animals that, like, so for example, some of the whales that are in our oceans today had already evolved by the Miocene. There were species of like antelopes, bears, cats, so like a lot of things that are alive today were alive then.
Yeah.
In some cases, not exactly the same. So say like some of the antelopes that were alive then, they've changed a little bit over the sort of the 9 million years since then. But I think one of the most like fascinating creatures of that time period that died out during the Miocene is called the Entelodonts, and they're also known as hell pigs.
We have a look.
Or Terminator pigs. They're also
Look
known
at
as.
this bad boy.
So the one I wanted to talk about
What beast.
is the largest Entelodont. Because if you're gonna single out one, you might as well single out the biggest, baddest one that there was. So Daeodon. I also believe it used to be known as something like Dionysus. And that
Looks a bit like a horse and a wolf crossed, and a pig, a horse-wolf pig.
what I was thinking when I looked at it
I
was
can see the wolf.
what I was thinking when I looked at it, I almost thought it looked like a cross between like a rhino. It was almost like a cross between like a rhino, a bison, and like a warthog.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see the warthog, definitely.
But I mean, they're a very interesting creature because although
on
we
that
call
one.
them hell
That was
pigs, they're not like strictly related to pigs. They are loosely related to pigs, but they're also they're like very similar to things like hippos. They also have some similarities with things like hippos.
Looks a bit like a hyena in the photo I'm looking at now.
And also would have lived quite a similar lifestyle to a hyena as well. But these things were crazy. So their heads were massive. They were about the size of a modern day white rhino or the size of a hippopotamus.
Get the one up with a person and
so as you can see from the picture, if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify or the radio, go on YouTube because then you can actually see, because we're bringing up pictures of the Daeodon. But yeah, these things were massive. They were the size of like a large hippo or a large rhino nowadays. But
that one's got good legs.
But evil, and their heads, even though they were massive, their heads were like massive proportionate to their body. I think there's something like their heads were like a third of their body weight, and they had massive, as you can see from sort of like the hunch in some of those pictures. If you see like the big hump on their back, that is all muscle that is needed strictly to maneuver how massive its head is and to have the power of its bite force.
Wow.
They had one of the most powerful bite forces of any land animal ever, like at least since the dinosaurs were extinct anyway, and they could literally crush bone with their teeth. So apparently when they were omnivorous, so like modern day pigs, and also like bears and like us, so they ate everything. So they would eat things like tubers, root vegetable and things like that they could find, but they would also prey on animals actively. And by that I mean they would hunt and kill animals, and then they would also scavenge animals as well. So they were such big tanks that
I'm good at anything. Anything that good one.
Yeah, if say like the ancestor of like a hyena or a wolf or a cat or something had brought something down, sometimes they would basically bully that predator away from the kill and then scavenge it. But yeah, they had like the most insane bite force, and apparently when they were if they were like eating like a prey animal, they like if you think about like a lion today or something like that, or like a wolf, they'll like eat the meat off the carcass and then leave almost like the bones. Whereas the Daeodon was such a savage, it didn't even bother doing that. It would just eat everything, and it would just like crunch up the bones.
Cool. It had a powerful enough bite to crush bones.
It would just smash right through the bones and
That's
just like
crazy.
just chew up the bones and the bone marrow and everything and just swallow everything.
Oh my
So
god.
That's good. Get a nice bit of that bone marrow.
Yeah.
And it's quite cool as well.
Send a baby.
We know that they like pretty much preyed on everything in their environment as well, because we found fossils of like big rhinos from that time period and stuff like that, with like puncture wounds in their bones.
Daeodon marks.
And they've taken like every big predator, and they've like tried to fit the like the skulls of that predator into those bite marks that are on those rhinos, and the only one that fits is the Daeodon. So they know that Daeodons even preyed on massive things like rhinos, which let's face it, like nowadays, I mean, unless it's like injured or like a baby one, like, you know, even like things like lions like don't really mess with like big rhinos in Africa. So Daeodons were absolutely savage. The idea of just this like massive Terminator pig, just like just eating an animal and not even caring about the bones, just crunching through the bones, just like destroying it. Imagine like hearing it just like snapping like twigs as it's just like.
Rhino hide is some of the thickest hide about as well, isn't it? It's like the skin is like, you know.
Yeah, it's like you're always saying, it's like if there's like an old guy that's like super tanned and stuff like that, you always say, oh, he's got like hide like a rhino or something like that, don't you? But yeah, another cool fact about them was how many degrees they could open their mouth. So apparently they could open their mouth.
Oh, like a hippo.
110 degrees.
Wow.
So like they would literally almost like just the sheer like scope. Imagine that almost like coming towards you, just like snapping down. And they had massive canine teeth, so it'd just be like savage creatures. They think
cool, look at that.
They think the reason that they probably died out was because the reason that they probably died out was because Initially it was it's like a little bit of a mystery, and it still is a little bit to this day, because traditionally omnivorous creatures are the ones that are least likely to die out. Because obviously, if you can almost like eat anything, then it's almost like regardless of what's happening in the seasons or weather-wise,
you're kind of sorted.
Yeah, because you can eat anything. It's not like you're a super specialist. You know, so animals that are super specialists are like much more susceptible to potentially going extinct. But they think the reason why it properly did is because about 9 million years ago, when they died out, there was like the Earth went through some droughts, and there was a lot less rainfall.
They got a bit thirsty.
Yeah, basically they think that Daeodon probably needed quite a lot of water to survive, because it was such like a big unit of a creature. It probably had plenty of food, but just didn't have enough water.
Oh, okay.
And they think that the water holes probably dried up, and then obviously they just got weaker and weaker and weaker, and then they died out. And the animals that were a little bit more, didn't need as much water and a bit more like adaptable in that way.
Well, camels all right.
I think well, no, seriously, because they would have been like ancestors of camels back in those days, and probably things like
I'd like to see that, an ancestral camel.
Yeah, well, we can probably bring them up.
Yeah,
if you want to just type in something like just type in Miocene camel, so like Miocene, like Miocene camel. Another thing you can do as well, like this is something I do sometimes. If you could literally just Google Miocene,
they look quite similar.
Just like
Miocene,
like longer necks,
yeah,
bit like a llama.
I think that there were primitive types of giraffe. Are you sure that's not actually like the ancestor of a giraffe? Because there were giraffes around.
Camelids.
Camelids, is it?
So it says giraffinus, so I don't know.
Well, maybe it's like a common ancestor of both of them. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a cool thing to do. If you're interested in what we're talking about, just type in Miocene animals on like Google or something, or find a book on Miocene animals and just read through it, and you'll be able to find out. There'll be like saber-toothed cats in there. There was a cool animal around at the time, and it was called bear dogs.
Bear dogs.
And simply the reason why they called them...
Get up a bear dog, man.
And they would have been like rivals of Daeodon. And they literally, the reason they called them bear dogs... type in Miocene bear dog, because people are probably just putting random pictures of dogs on Google that look like brilliant.
Bears. Yeah, they're like mastiffs and all that stuff.
I just could just imagine somebody being like, "Oh yeah, my dog looks like a bear."
They look like bears.
So the reason they literally call them bear dogs is because they look like a cross between bears and dogs.
They're like a huge squirrel when you look at that.
A bear dog, or as young Bullwinkle says, a massive squirrel, a massive evil squirrel. But yeah, bear dogs. How cool is that?
Foxy bear.
Yeah, man.
Foxy bear, baby. But also, they would have been pack animals. So they weren't as big or as strong as Daeodon, but they would have been more intelligent. They had bigger brains, and they worked in packs. So that was the advantage they had over Daeodon. So one-on-one, a Daeodon would have destroyed them. But they always had they went around in pairs at least. So 2 at the minimum, bear dogs. And they were faster. They were faster than Daeodon. They had sharper teeth. They were faster. They think that's another reason why the Daeodon might have gone extinct as well, because they were big tank animals.
Yeah.
So
they weren't in packs. They would just go around on their own. They're Daeodons.
Yeah, they would like solitary. Very, very stupid animals.
Oh, really?
Very stupid. They're almost just like food processing plants. Do you know what I mean? Like this big, a big mean
lumbering thing,
a big mean-tempered food processing plant. That's the easiest way to think of it.
I just got this image of him like taking a chunk out of the ground.
Oh yeah,
out of the earth.
Well, they would have done if they went up to like a tree or something and there was a root sticking out. We would just rip that root straight out and come across like some animal and just eat that to whatever. God. Would have just eaten anything in its path.
Sounds good.
But they say that even today, don't they? They say that's one of like, the problems that's going on in America. They brought in because pigs aren't native to North America,
right?
But they were brought over by the Europeans, and now in some states, I think Texas is one of them. They've got a serious out of control pig problem because the pigs have gone feral again. The pigs escaped farms and stuff, and then apparently it's crazy. So you think of a domesticated pig like a you almost like you think of it like that nice pink little.
Yeah.
Well, obviously that's almost like that. You won't ever find a pig like that in the wild.
Yeah.
That's like a domesticated pig. So originally in like Britain, for example, there would have been like hogs, boars and stuff
warthogs
in our forests, in our woodland,
wild boars. Yeah,
and then we domesticated them, and then over the centuries they like lost their hair and their tusks. It's weird. But one of the things that's crazy that we're finding, and I think this is mental, because you'd think that it would take a lot longer. Within a couple of generations, apparently. So say
they grow their hair back
and their tusks.
Yeah.
Wow. So there there are wild pigs now running around in America that are only like a few generations. They're like, their granddad pig was like and they've gone bigger. They're like massive hogs.
Yeah, causes 1.5 billion in damages a year.
Yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about. So now,
look at that beast.
Yeah, they've grown massive.
And they've gone brown rather than pink.
And it's become a massive issue for the ecosystem in places like Texas because obviously the way that ecosystems evolve is, say you haven't got a predator that preys in a certain way, well then animals are going to start evolving in a way that doesn't have to worry about that. So what I'm talking about is, say there's things like ground nesting birds that have evolved to nest on the ground and for that to be okay, because over millions of years it's almost like their antenna, or whatever you want to call it, has told them as they're evolving that they don't need to worry about being predated.
They can be on the floor, baby.
I mean, obviously, a lot of trees, animal like birds, say in Britain, will like nest in the trees because we have things like foxes and cats and badgers that would eat them. So they've evolved to nest in the trees. If you don't have the need to, they nest on the ground. But then these pigs have come in, and a bit like what we were saying about Daeodon, although they're almost like the little baby equivalents, because even though these are giant hogs, they're obviously nowhere near the size of the Terminator pig, but they eat everything. So they're going around. Apparently, there's like species of ground nesting birds that are almost like have gone extinct because these wild hogs in like Texas and stuff have just eaten them to extinction. Plant life and things like that have been just like destroyed. So apparently, they're giving out tags when you go like hunting in America. You're given like a tag. So say you got given like 4 tags. That means you can kill 4 hogs or whatever. So hunters apparently have been giving out tags like nobody's business.
Try and get it under control.
And there's a video. And I know it was quite controversial. I know like a lot of like vegans and stuff kicked off about it. But to be fair, I think it's because they don't understand. But there's like videos of like Ted Nugent, like the American rock star, and he's like hanging out of a helicopter with a machine gun, and he's just gunning down these wild hogs. And he's doing it because it's around his property in Texas. He's like got this like big estate, and he just lives in the middle of nowhere in Texas with like all this land. And they were just destroying his property. So the video got put out online, and everyone was like, "Oh, Ted Nugent's a murderer! Like he's evil," and all the vegans were like targeting him, but. He's actually, if anything, although it looks brutal, don't get me wrong, it is brutal, but he's actually doing it for a good cause. He's culling them because otherwise they will eat everything. They'll literally wipe animals off the face of the earth. Animals will go extinct. Plant life will be ruined. As you said, how much was it? Over $4 billion?
$1.5 billion.
$1.5 billion worth of damage. So, yeah, people are just having to like try and just kill the hell out of them, which is crazy.
I remember reading something about introducing wolves back into
Scotland.
Was it Scotland? Was it? And how it helped the ecosystem so much, like brought it back into balance and stuff. It's like
that's the thing. Some things you can add and obviously it'll benefit. And other things you add and it will just destroy everything. So like literally, those wild pigs are just those hogs in America are just going around listening to "Destroy Everything" by Hatebreed all the time. If you haven't heard that song, go listen to "Destroy Everything" by Hatebreed. Those hogs in America are listening
or come
to
and watch
that.
a Death by Cargo because we cover that song.
Yeah. So they're just listening to that on repeat on Spotify, those pigs. Destroy everything. Dominate what makes us one. Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, those naughty piggies. But yeah,
Jesus.
Daeodon.
Look at the size of that one.
Whoa.
That's a beast.
A
beast.
Yeah, man. It's dangerous stuff, those hogs.
Real chuffed at catching that.
He's like, yeah, I'm a good boy. Yeah, but that's another. Getting back to my original point, one of the reasons they think Daeodon would have died out as well, apart from the droughts, is because they were, things like bear dogs could outrun them. So apparently around that time as well, the land was getting flatter. So as it was getting more like, it was like the land was turning into like plains. So it became more advantageous to be like the bear dog or to be like something like a cat that was very fast and could catch things like antelopes.
Or also run things down, like as in like dogs have got way better cardio, haven't they?
Yes.
So they'll literally just run.
That's like the wolf method.
Run it into the ground.
Yeah. So, but like the Daeodon didn't have either of those things. They would have been very powerful for probably about 20 meters.
Yeah.
And they would just be like.
Don't need loads of water.
Yeah. And then if you ain't got loads of water, you in trouble.
Get eaten by those dogs.
You in trouble, son.
Those bear dogs.
Yeah, but that is the tale of the Daeodon anyway. So if you want to look into more about that, then yeah, go research Daeodons. As I said, so many fascinating and like creatures that have actually like existed since the Earth began.
Come and gone.
And I think, like as I said, like one of my first ever things that I was like fascinated by when I was a small child was like dinosaurs and stuff. I think that like when I first realised, like saw, you know, documentaries and read stuff about like dinosaurs when I was a really little kid. The idea that these things were like actual animals like we have today, they were actually alive. You see how colossal some of these things are. It's actually insane. Anyway, on that note, we're going to listen to a track now. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about dinosaurs. I'm going to talk about the first dinosaur fossil that was ever found and where it was found and what that dinosaur was. You are listening to Pandora's Box on Aspen Waite Radio. Cheers for being with us all this evening, and if you're on YouTube, thanks for taking in our visages.
Oh yeah.
I want to talk a little bit now about the discovery of dinosaurs, because it's quite interesting to think. I think 200 years ago, people didn't even know what a dinosaur was. People didn't even know about them. 200 years ago, people obviously were still a lot more religious.
Yeah.
And they thought that if an animal wasn't almost like documented in the Bible, then it never existed.
That's crazy to think.
That is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, to think that 200 years ago, people didn't even know about it.
And it was controversial, man, when people even started finding dinosaurs, because a lot of like religious zealots almost like fought against it.
Yeah.
They were like, no, because it's not in the Bible, so it can't exist. And it was like, there's a bone right here.
Here you go.
Yeah.
What I think is crazy as well is like you see those periods. Now you think of it like, what was that period you just said? The Miocene.
So that was about 9 million
And
years
in
ago.
my head, I've got almost like rocks when you see them piled on each other. You've got these different time periods, and that's what it is, I suppose, isn't it? You go deeper and you see those different layers, and that's
an evolution
that's
process.
but it's so concrete in like between this period and this period was this, and then this period. And then, but like you're saying, 200 years ago, we didn't even know that dinosaurs existed. So we've managed to like compartmentalize all of it into these different time periods of these different animals that came, and we've got pictures of them and all of that stuff. It's like blows my mind that it's that clear information about all that stuff.
I remember you were like in awe like a little while back, because you were saying that you found out that like sharks were older than trees. So like sharks evolved in what's called the Devonian period, and that's almost called like the dawn of fish. So that's almost like was almost like the age of fish. So that's when like fish evolved, and it was almost like the heyday of fish. So that's quite cool. But another thing I think is almost like mental to think. So in the Devonian period, there wasn't like there were no reptiles or mammals or anything like that yet. You know,
all water,
just none of that.
And I think another thing that's crazy to think is Homo sapiens as we are now. So humans, exactly like we are, have only been around for about 200,000 years.
2,000 years.
Yeah, Jesus, when Jesus was born. No, 200,000 years. What is classified as human? So like the first human is sort of to be as Homo erectus, evolved about 2 million years ago, right? Ooh. But then imagine that the reign of the dinosaurs lasted for 250 million years. So dinosaurs ruled the planet for 250 million years.
That's
how long ago?
But Homo
mental.
About three. Do some quick maths. So they died out. The Cretaceous ended about 66 million years ago. So if that went on for 250 years, so that's like 310, is it? About 310 million years ago.
So the dinosaurs were before there was any what was it? Not Homo erectus. The ones before Homo erectus, or do you say it was 200?
So dinosaurs died out as we know them today. So birds are related to dinosaurs. So in that regard, there are still dinosaurs around. But the big dinosaurs and stuff died out 66 million years ago. Homo erectus evolved 2 million years ago.
2 million.
Just 2 million.
Right, okay.
But the Cretaceous period ended 66 million.
So there was no
years ago.
chance of any kind of human-y things around that time.
There were no apes or anything even remotely close to an ape.
That's crazy.
There was nothing remotely close to an ape when the dinosaurs were around. They were like the closest thing that you would have got. The only mammals that were around were like
water voles.
Were like rodents. I swear, like every single time we talk about mammals, from those Drew goes water voles. like rodent type things. I think the largest mammal in the dinosaur era was about the size of a European badger.
Nice.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
A European badger.
Yeah, so that was like the largest mammal in the reign of the dinosaurs. But do you know what country the first ever dinosaur fossil found in was?
Country?
Yeah, don't look it up. Don't cheat.
I'm not. I'm just trying to think.
Country. New England.
Huh?
New England.
New England. New England's a state in America.
Yeah, it's
I was gonna say
America.
probably America. Yeah.
No, it was found in England.
Really?
It was found near Oxford
Nice.
in a mine about 200 years ago. There was a miner was chipping away down there. I don't know what ore he was looking for. He was mining for something near Oxford, and then he was chipping away, and then found this massive jaw with all these crazy teeth, and was like, "What the hell is this?"
Oh my god.
It's a dragon.
Yeah, that's what the Chinese used to think. So they think that like the Chinese, they got their myths of dragons from finding big dinosaur bones, and then how tails are created. So they think nowadays in Greece, their legend of the Cyclops came from finding mammoth skulls, because mammoths have a big hole in the middle of their forehead here, and it's where their trunk comes out. It's where their trunk would come. But when it erodes, it looks like there's a big hole here.
Yeah.
So to obviously like the Greeks that would have found it, they obviously just used to say they think of like a human skull with like the two holes here, and they thought it was like this giant's skull
Thing with one eye,
but with just one eye. So they think that's where it came from. Things like those sort of myths. But and it was a big carnivorous jaw. So anyway, he got in touch with, I guess, like some locals. You couldn't say a paleontologist because they didn't exist at the time, but some sort of
London Museum,
some sort of scientist
Yeah.
came and had a look at it. And anyway, they found more bones. They excavated them, and that's when they first find out about dinosaurs. Dinosaur just means terrible lizard. So they figured out that they were like things. There were characteristics in the bones that are extremely
reptile.
Yeah, extremely reptilian. So they figured out that they were the closest thing to them were sort of reptiles. Although obviously nowadays people say birds are, but it's like it depends what criteria you're looking at. Basically, obviously dinosaurs were reptiles. They were reptiles. Not all reptiles are dinosaurs, but all dinosaurs are reptiles. So it's one of those things. So they found it, and that was called Megalosaurus. So it was a giant carnivore that lived in modern day Britain.
Wow.
All those eons ago, and they called it Megalosaurus. So I think it was like a 30-foot long carnivorous predator.
Trying to get Megalosaurus.
They're already up, man.
Oh,
They're already up.
Share a
Looks
couple.
a bit like a T-Rex.
Well, yeah. So
there's like an interesting bit of information here.
Yeah.
And I'll get it up for everyone to look at on the screen.
Yeah.
Megalosaurus has been reconstructed over years, and it shows that they originally thought they were quadrupeds, like walking around with a huge hump on their back, and over time they've developed into this more raptor, Tyrannosaurus Rex looking sort of creature.
Raptor's probably not the best way to describe it, because raptor is a specific thing. I know that's probably a little bit pedantic to some people, but it is a truth. So a raptor is like a specific type of theropod, but those type of dinosaurs.
So what does theropod mean?
Theropod dinosaurs. To be honest, I can't remember exactly what theropod means in terms of. They use two legs. They walk on
little
two
arms.
legs. They're bipedal. 2 legs, little arms. They walk on two. They don't necessarily have to have little arms.
Okay.
But they walk on 2 legs and they're carnivorous. That's a theropod.
I think you can really see, like, when you look at dinosaurs, like the bird thing.
Yeah.
Like it looks like reptile, cross between a reptile and a bird. Like when you think of like birds with the little arms and the 2 legs.
Raptors would have been very bird-like. So if you get up like a picture or something like a velociraptor, they would have been very bird-like, and they nowadays think that they would even have been like covered in feathers. So they'd have looked like big evil birds with but like instead they hadn't evolved beaks yet, so they would have had mouths still full of teeth, but they would have looked very bird-like other than that.
Oh yeah, look at that velociraptor with all the feathers.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah.
That looks crazy.
That's
What
mental.
about? Well, I remember you telling me. What was the era of Terra-Birds?
Oh, so that was the what epoch was that? That was like they evolved right after the Cretaceous. So when the Cretaceous when the dust had settled from the K2 extinction, which was the K2 extinction is the name of the extinction event that wiped out all of the big dinosaurs, all of the theropods and the sauropods and stuff. So yeah, so just to finish that, so a sauropod, if you think of those like quadrupedal dinosaurs with like the long necks and long tails, they're all called sauropods. If you think of like Megalosaurus, T-Rex, Carcharodontosaurus, Allosaurus, they're all called theropods. Bipedal, big dinosaurs, big sharp teeth. Wouldn't want to meet them. So yeah, when they all died out of the K2 extinction, basically a massive meteorite hit modern day. I can't remember if it was Mexico or New Mexico, but I think to this day there's a 4-mile long wide crater. You actually think about that, like a crater in itself, which is 4 miles long. Maybe get a picture of that. Put up like the K2 extinction crater. I can't remember if it's Mexico or New Mexico. I know it's something Mexico. But yeah, it's just this massive gaping hole to this day where, like, think 66 million years old, 66 million years on, there's still a crater that's that massive to this day.
That. Oh my god.
And it's 4 miles long, 4 miles wide. How crazy is that? But yeah, what are you asking? Yeah, so once the dust from the K2 extinction event had like cleared, and the Earth sort of got back into had its status quo realigned. After that's when Terra-Birds.
Get a picture of a Terra-bird up as well, man.
Yeah.
Terra-birds.
I can't remember what the name of the biggest
like
Terra-bird.
evil dodos.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, look at them.
Oh, and they would have been like savage. Like you wouldn't have wanted to have
no teeth, but this massive savage beak.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Rip something in half.
Oh, and it would have definitely have eaten us. As well.
Look at that with next to the people.
Yeah.
Next to the soldier. Look at that.
Crazy, isn't it?
Like how big
that's cool.
And they would have, like, you know, if you met one, no doubt about it, it would have eaten.
I can't imagine a bird that big. That scares me a lot. Like for some reason I can really imagine it with reptiles and stuff, but birds that big.
They'd almost like that's almost that a Terra-bird is almost a good example of like a cross between a modern day bird and a dinosaur. You know how, and also you know how we showed that Velociraptor was covered in feathers. That's almost like the next level on from that is something like that Terra-bird. By that point they had beaks. Because Velociraptors didn't have beaks, they still had that reptilian snout.
Yeah.
And teeth. That's a massive difference, isn't it? The difference between having teeth and a beak. I mean, that's a massive difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then it's almost like once those birds evolved, once they evolved those beaks, and then they became like proper birds, they obviously never went back from that.
Have you ever seen a real angry chicken? Like a super angry chicken?
Like
I sent you a video.
Oh, is that? Did you send me it? The one with the hawk?
No. It was a chicken messing up a crow or a raven or something.
Okay.
But this chicken was like laying the smack down on a
there's
crow.
also this one where there's a chicken with its chicks, and a hawk comes down to grab the chicks, and this chicken like goes mad on the hawk and like literally like, you know, is like pecking it and all this stuff. But it's like, you know, goes crazy, and it's like very powerful little creature.
Oh
I don't know if it's like an old wives' tale. But I've definitely heard before that the closest living relative to a Tyrannosaurus Rex today is a chicken. Which is what is crazy, innit?
Yeah.
You think like T-Rex is like
Tyrannosaurus chicken.
Tyrannosaurus Rex, which literally means tyrant lizard king. That's what it translates to.
It's a cool name.
And it's one of the biggest theropods of all time, and I think it still to this day has the strongest bite force of any theropod. So like a bit like what we were saying about Entelodonts earlier, like a T-Rex wouldn't have just been biting through the flesh. It would have just crushed you and just ground you up in its mouth and swallowed you. You know what I mean? It would have been able to like bite a car in half. You know what I mean? Like savage. But and it's just hilarious to think that today is like the closest living relative is a chicken. Yeah, I said I'm not 100% sure if that is just like one of those things that people said or not. You know what I mean? If it's just like one of those things that made their own.
I've definitely heard it.
Oh, they are related. I just don't know if it's the closest living relative. That's the only thing I'm not sure of.
I've heard that before. I don't like you say. I don't know.
They
if it's
definitely
true, but
look
I've heard it.
a bit chickeny.
Yeah.
You can tell where the relation is.
The closest living relatives to Tyrannosaurus Rex are birds such as chickens and ostriches.
Ostriches.
I think I was going to say as well a minute ago, like the closest thing really to a Terra-bird today is something like an ostrich.
Yeah,
or
I
like
was going to say ostriches are huge.
Yeah.
They're big.
I think it's one thing that I think is quite interesting. You know how obviously we talked about the raptor dinosaurs, so you have like Velociraptor. I'll tell you one the best raptor to look up. Type in Utahraptor. So like U as in like the state in America. So like Utah. Utahraptor. Get a picture of that. That was the biggest, nastiest raptor up. This is a bad boy. Maybe try and get a picture of that compared to a human or something if there is a picture. Because these were like big. I think they were like the biggest raptors. But
Very long tail.
One of the things I think is really interesting is that we call modern day predatory birds like eagles and stuff. We call them raptors, don't we? So they're those type of predatory birds. So like hawks, eagles, falcons, anything like that. We call them raptors. So in that way, it's almost like cool because it shows the connection between the modern day massive predatory like things like eagles and, you know, even back in the dinosaur days, you know,
the predatory dinosaurs.
Yeah. I know that
Epic.
the second dinosaur ever found, I know, was also in England. That was Iguanodon. And they literally named it Iguanodon purely because the person that found the fossil realised the teeth were almost identical to modern-day iguanas, but were just massive. So I think, if I remember rightly, it just means something like iguana tooth. I think Iguanodon just translates to something like iguana tooth or something like that.
Wow, that's a big boy.
But it's quite cool. I think there's a park in London where they try to recreate the animals from their knowledge at the time. And one thing that was quite interesting is they put like the thumb bone. They thought the thumb bone was a horn. So if you go to this park in London, they've got these recreations of what they think iguanodon are, but they're all quadrupedal and have like a horn, almost like a little rhino.
That's crazy, man.
But yeah, they actually found out afterwards that actually that was a thumb bone, and they actually had these like big thumbs, and they used it like for protection and also to like maneuver around vegetation and stuff because they were plant-eating dinosaurs. But it's quite cool if you can get like a picture of that park up in London. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, we're gonna play a song for you now. This is "Burning for You" by Blue Oyster Cult. When we come back, we're gonna wrap up the show. Cheers, guys. So yeah, I've had a nice time talking today about dinosaurs and do you know what? And Daeodon, the largest ever Entelodont, aka Terminator pig.
A lot of good information for the listeners.
If you've just joined us today and you're like, what? They talked about something called a Terminator pig and like the first ever dinosaur and stuff like that. Then just remember that you can listen back to the show anytime on aspenwaitradio.com or just watch the show on YouTube or Spotify when it comes out. Be out in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners and our viewers, Mr. Bullwinkle?
When you're out on a walk, watch out for the pigs.